Welcome Leo to your in-depth monthly horoscope for July 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be mindful of your ruler, which is the Sun. The Sun at 9 degrees and 39 minutes in the sign of Cancer for you is sheltered. This is the part of the Sun's journey through the sky which gives you a prompt to take some time out, take a breath, and can see you more focused towards inner work, personal development, healing, and also just pausing and reflecting on perhaps what the last year has meant for you before the Sun powers into your sign. Celebratory moment on the 22nd. But the Sun is forging a rather ironic link because the Moon in the sign of Taurus is high in the sky, very visible, and the Moon of course is about your emotions, the Sun very much more about your actions. So your actions in some ways could be to be more meditative, but the Moon suggests whatever you are going through, the chances are other people will probably be aware of it because the Moon is up front. Also Mars, the planet of passion, drive, desire, and of course sometimes anger is also in a very visible part of your chart, also like the Moon in Taurus, and that's linking to Venus in the sign of Cancer. So we've got a theme going here, but Mars is going to be in this very authoritative, assertive and self-confident location right through to the 20th of the month. So for the first 3 weeks, if you do want to make progress professionally, this is urging you to engage with others. However, we also have Uranus in that sector, and that has been much more disruptive since 2019 full time. But Uranus is connecting to Mercury in the sign of Cancer. So right at the start of the month, the cluster of energy in Cancer is more reflective. It can be to do with doing deep research, even market research. It can be to do with taking soundings. It can be to do with private developments that you want to keep close to your chest. But I feel in some way or another, it is really to do with your connection to the world at large. So you're building up to really relaunch yourself in a much more outgoing way, and the Cancerian energy is asking you to nurture some of the parts of your situation or even your identity that maybe do feel a bit more vulnerable. You have a reputation of being very self-confident, and of course there are some Leos who reflect that archetype, but of course there are other Leos who may have more Cancerian energy in their natal chart, more Virgo energy, and may be quieter and not really quite so much out there. But whatever type of Leo you are, this is going to be a very dynamic month, particularly in the last 10 days. But as it begins, just being very much in touch, mulling things over with your inner voice, the deeper part of your nature, even bringing in and healing in some way some parts of you that may feel rather vulnerable or bruised or a little bit hurt. So the way you can do that really is having the confidence to link to people who are more up and out there, who can encourage you, be cheerleaders for you, or perhaps you can use your more psychological skills in order to steer your future moves. So that sets the scene as we come into this month. But Venus then moves forwards and connects to Saturn. Saturn has been providing some headwinds to you over the last 15 months in terms of long-term earnings, shared resources. It could be a partner, their position or situation has changed, which has impacted you. Now, another part of Saturn in the 8th house is it can be to do, Saturn, bricks and mortar. Maybe the cost of your mortgage, for example, is having quite the impact. But the great connection between Venus and Saturn is suggesting if you are starting to develop some ideas and just ruminating upon them at this stage, don't underestimate just how solid these could be future forwards. But also Jupiter, the planet of fortune, of growth, is in a very sociable part of your situation at the start of this month. And whilst the 12th house energies could see you become more mindful of who's really for you and who's not, Jupiter suggests there are going to be some people who are really going to be very positive for you. Not least because Jupiter links brilliantly with both the moon and also the sun. So you've got two semi-sextiles, and it's the pivot that's Jupiter in your 11th house. So whatever you're doing at the moment, I think it has, as you come into July, a major bearing on what your long-term plan is and who your long-term alliances are. So if there is a bit of a changing of the guard, there are some new people showing up in your situation, and some people maybe you've been a little bit more disappointed by could be making way. But on the 2nd, Mercury bursts into your sign, and I have to be honest, Mercury's far happier in Leo, because in the sign of Cancer, although it has been constructive in some ways, particularly with that link with Uranus suggesting that some ideas that you've had that are novel, different and fresh can gain traction, at the end of the day, the sign of Cancer is water, and Mercury benefits from a crisper and more detached environment, so air or earth. So you put it into fire, what we're getting is the passion coming in. And also Mercury in Leo has a lot more self-confidence. The water of Cancer can diminiate and bring a more subjective energy to bear. But you're going to feel that if you have got something you want to say that's really important to you, you can do it with a lot more conviction from the 2nd. Will other people be all ears? Not necessarily so, because Pluto, the planet of change, is pivoting exactly opposite Mercury as it moves. So over the first few days of this month, if there is something that you're keen to go forwards on, that you have been researching carefully, don't necessarily expect that people are going to be automatically receptive. On the 5th, we have the new moon in Cancer. Perhaps as far as the moon's concerned, the most powerful new moon of the whole year. It could be argued, as far as the sun's concerned, it's the new moon in Leo, whereas the moon rules Cancer. Now this one is in a T-square with the nodal axis. If you recall, last July 2023, the North Node, or the point of destiny, which is our collective direction of travel, moved into your fellow fire sign of Aries, where we have Chiron. And both in a way are about expanding and developing our identity. But for you, it's about being a little bit braver about changing things up. So what this particular new moon says to you is that yes, you can continue that process, but you do need to stay closely in touch with what you feel, but also the more psychological parts of your situation. 12th house new moons are, for that reason, a little more challenging. New moons, we know, can be when we set our intentions. And this one is saying don't ignore your fears and anxieties. If you embrace the shadow or psychological side of your nature, bring it in to be part of you and approach things in a very holistic way, then you will still make great progress. But if you're kind of a little bit unsure about doing that, that's when this can cause some issues. Because essentially, the pivot between the north and south nodes is about communication. So if some people are making observations that you feel are a little unkind or a little harsh, try to cut them a little bit of slack. They could have a point. But you get another slice of major celestial support when on the 12th, Venus glides into your sign. If you remember, Venus had an extended stay in Leo last year, but the retrograde did cause some mischief. This year, Venus, like Mercury, goes opposite Pluto. You could find that there's some intense emotions washing around the mix at the heart of this month, particularly around a relationship. If you want to do something for yourself, and perhaps all that prepping and planning at the start of the month with that Cancerian energy has been setting the foundations for that, now you can really start to flourish. But someone close to you may not actually be particularly pleased, particularly if you want to do something that's much more individualistic, that helps you to redefine your persona. Now that could be a completely new look, it could be by some new interests, it could be by starting on a new journey. Also, it's possible for some Leos that if a relationship has come to a close, which is entirely possible with Venus in the 12th house at the start of the month, and you want to draw a line in the sand, that could be a painful transition. But it doesn't mean that the relationship recently ended. You could have found yourself mourning for someone you weren't involved with romantically. It could have been a loved one. And there may have been moments of deep nostalgia at the start of the month. But now you get a chance to really cheer yourself on, to move into the moment and creating a more dynamic persona. Even if you're a dedicated follower of fashion, some new tweaks can give you an added amount of confidence. But just be aware that someone close to you may be a little jealous. But it's also possible that you could draw a new admirer to you. And this admirer could have a lot of charisma. And that is something that can be very evocative for Leos. And if you do find yourself drawn towards someone and they're pouring on the charm and it's very much a hot pursuit, just be cautious, because when Venus and Pluto are in conflict, as they are in an opposition, essentially what can happen is charm can disguise people's true motives, particularly around money or sex. So if there is someone that you're really taken with, just let it develop at its own pace. Now on the 20th, perhaps one of the most exciting parts of this whole month, because Mars has been going through a very dominant part of your situation for 6 weeks. Now it moves into a much more democratic but also sociable and friendly area, the 11th house. So for the next 6 weeks, your interaction with others is going to be that much greater, but less about work and your ambition and more about how you can network and interact with people in a more pleasurable way. But Mars forges an amazing link to Pluto. So as much as Venus clashed with Pluto, Mars forges an amazing trine. We think these planets, Mars about impulse, desire, Pluto can be, particularly on the 7th house cusp, a deep yearning around changing your relationships. The combination between the two, particularly around your long-term future, can give you a surge of drive and desire to get what you really need. But we do have a complexity, because on the 21st we get the second of the two Capricorn full moons. If you recall, we had the strawberry full moon at the start of when the sun moved into Cancer across the 21st and 22nd of June. This second one, however, whereas that one was conflicted by Neptune, this one is blessed by Neptune. And I feel that if you've really been working on those deeper parts of your nature, perhaps in terms of some wounds, or perhaps integrating your emotional and physical health, which is represented by Capricorn, you can get through this full moon much better. And then you get the most amazing blessing, because the sun returns to your sign for the first time in 11 months, but it too is in a wonderful alliance with Mars. And they're going to be connecting to each other fantastically well through to the end of this month. But the sun does go opposite Pluto as well. So that balance between doing what's right for you, the individual, that works for the person or people you're closely connected to, there may be some kind of chaffing. And because Mars is giving you a lot of encouragement, a furnace-like encouragement, to really articulate, Gemini, words, what you really want, the people that you can relate to the best and understand that you're trying to redefine your individuality, they're going to be the people that you forge the closest alliances to. But also, if with Mercury in your sign you have been working hard on a creative plan or strand, you can start to see progress with that on the 26th as Mercury returns to Virgo, which it rules. Virgo is very much about precision and being very discriminating and working through things. in a very careful way. But having Mercury move here for you can be about money, so you could see an uptick around your finances. But Chiron, the comet, which is very much to do with our identity in Aries, but also our superpower, but also where we can feel least heard, that does go into a retrograde. So with the full moon on the 5th being affected by the North Node in Aries, and then Chiron going retrograde at the end of this month, important to keep searching your essential truth, because that's what the ninth house is about, but also having the confidence to change things up, change the status quo. Because you're a fixed sign, I find that Leos can have a surprising adherence to what they know and a surprising reluctance to change things. Since your sign is ruled by the sun and you have a reputation of being so self-assured. So comfort and stability in the things that we know can sometimes hold us back from really being more pioneering. So I think Chiron going into a retrograde is just asking you through to Boxing Day to keep working at the things you're doing to be more daring. So the sun moving into your sign is definitely a chance to re-engineer your whole life purpose. With Mars in support, Pluto in some ways in support, perhaps challenging you as well. It just depends on your unique situation. But you've started the month reflecting very deeply about some past issues, some hurts, some losses, some identity issues, perhaps also doing a lot of planning, thinking carefully, resting, healing. But by the end of this month, you're really going to be seizing life with both your hands, and you've got a fantastic opportunity, one of the best ever, frankly, Leo, to demonstrate all your superb qualities. So turn up the volume, believe in yourself. Your sign is all about radiance. Send out those warming, affectionate, playful energies and see what it brings back to you. It's been a pleasure being with you. Have a great July, and if you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so now.